elite faculties of the institute who invited me on this very important day in Indian history. And I'm happy to address those few who have chosen a very, very unique career. It's called marine. Right? Not everybody has this guts to do it. Your life is tough. I know you're the chosen few who have actually taken this path of one of the oldest professions in the world, being a mariner. I personally thank and salute each one of the mariners out here. Good luck to all of you in your career. So on what we are talking about today, it's been 103 years of this Jallianwala massacre, or we call it as an undisturbed massacre. Just to give some historic perspective, we all have different opinion about the British Raj, the British rule, right? So a lot of people say, see, Britishers given us railways, Britishers given us the education, Britishers made us civilized, and so on, so. There has been a lot of spoken about it, that, see the railway line, see the roads, all given with British. Yes, they did give all this, but this particular incident will tell you what is the kind of rule British had given India for over 300 years and what kind of sacrifices our forefathers have made so that we all have been sitting in a comfortable AC room, you guys are studying, and we are quite happy and safe, first of all safe. Look at our neighboring nation, look at Sri Lanka. They've been fighting for their food, medicines, electricity. Look at Pakistan, it's in complete disaster. Look at Nepal, look at Ukraine, Russia, Iraq. So what made us to be at this stage is the sacrifice which our ancestors have done. And in those millions of sacrifices, this one incident actually changed the course of Indian history. So Indian history can broadly classify one as ancient and one as medieval and one as modern. Ancient is what Rajas used to do, Chandragupta Maurya. You had heard of Chola's dynasty, the great mariner of those times, still till date. Nautical sciences would be doing a lot of navigation. Imagine a king taking a ship and navigating all the way to Cambodia, right? And then came the medieval history, which predominantly was we were under Mughal rule, and then came the modern history, where we were briefly under the British rule for 300 years. So in this point, so post 19th century, a very, very important thing happened between 1914 to 18, which was World War I. The entire world was under war. Either they were fighting for the British or they were fighting against the British. Most of the British colonial nations, we had no role to play in that war. But however, because we were under the British rule, so we also took part in this war. So how many of you knew we lost close to 3 lakh soldiers, Indian soldiers in World War II fighting for British, right from Belgium, Iraq, Syria, Burma, all the way to China. Why did we do this? We did this because it was an important war where our masters, political masters and colonial masters were fighting. So it was assumed that if we support them in this war, they will give us freedom back. We will get our rights to govern our own nation. We will get our political rights and even the security rights to rule ourselves. So that's the reason millions of soldiers from India went and fought in World War I and II. In that, 60% of those soldiers who went predominantly came from Punjab. When I say Punjab, today we have part of Punjab here and part out in Pakistan, and Haryana and Chandigarh was was then part of Punjab. So 60% of the soldiers, Indian soldiers who fought in World War I came from this region. Why? They were strong, they were martial class, they were strong fighters, and they were great patriotic people and they were great nationalists. Doesn't make the other part of India lesser nationalists. It's purely by the class and thing which British observed at that time. So we participated. British won the war, World War I decisively. Germany was crushed. And then the political scenario. What we assumed was, yes, we have a lot of parts of the governments. We have police, we have security, we have administration, we have judiciary, so on, so on, so on, health, education, so on. So what happened is, British said, okay, we will give you this part of it, you can govern yourself. There are certain things which we want to govern. So they gave, what all they gave? They gave local administration, this is basically the municipal rights. They gave parts of education. They gave parts of judiciary, not full parts of judiciary. It means that Indians can also be part of judiciary. But two things they kept it with themselves. One was the national security, which means the army, navy and air force. And second was, any guess? The police. So these two were under the British rule. So when this thing happened, so the World War got over, but British could not stay in their commitment of giving semi-autonomy and then slowly moving into full autonomy, right? So there were large-scale protests across India. Our father of the nation then said, okay, we need to have a coordinated effort. We were all fighting in bits and pieces. Let's take this together. So that's the time we decided something called the civil disobedience movement. We will not obey law. We will not pay the taxes. Let me see, unless you make me part of the government, unless you let us govern ourselves, we are not going to pay your taxes. We are not going to cooperate with you, with the rules. So Punjab was again the epicenter of this. Large scale protests were happening across Punjab. And then what British did was, even today, we call it as a betrayal. There's one World War II veteran I met in way back in 2012. No, it was 2006 or 7 somewhere. Very aged person, is no more. He said when we fought in the trenches of Germany, right? So we all gave our life. We were killed, our buddies were getting killed. We did this for only one reason. It's because we wanted our country to be independent. But when we came back, and then he went back to Amritsar, he's from Amritsar. When he went back, they said, okay, we are going to have a stricter rule. So what's the rule called? Rowlatt Act. You can Google it. You all need to know this. Today we speak about a lot of laws, right? So whenever a law is passed, it majorly benefits the majority of the people, but it also affects a bit minority of the people, right? So today we have a fishing ban, right? Why do we do a fishing ban? Fish has to breathe, otherwise we are going to deplete our marine. But when we do this, are the fishermen happy for the 40 days? They are not. But why do we do this? We do it for a larger purpose. But Rowlatt Act was just an opposite of it. Why it was opposite? It said there are too much of political movements, there are too much of rallies, which disturbs the peace of the nation. So anybody who goes against the nation, quote unquote, anybody who goes against the nation, or think or suspect that he or she goes against the nation, they can be arrested, jailed for n number of days. They can be put in cellular jails. We don't have cellular jails these days. So they can be put in the jail without a trial. Like, I pick up someone, the law of natural justice says that I need to hear both sides, right? We had a terrorist who came in Mumbai, attacked us, Afzal Qaza, but we gave him a fair trial. He had a lawyer, and then the trial completed, the court decided that he is a terrorist and he killed people, finally we handled it. But we followed a due course of law. But in Rowlatt Act, nothing was there. Anybody can be arrested in the name of treason. Anybody can be arrested in the name of suspicion of going against the country. So imagine some police guys come in and then they pick up 5 of your batchmates, walk out and say these 5 people have posted something in Facebook or Twitter and something which is against the country. That was the kind of law which the country said we are not going to agree. So this protest picked up pace, especially in Punjab and northwestern India. When I say India, we can imagine India and Pakistan put together. That's the real India, right? So when this happened, the movement got picked up, and then on 10th of April, what is God comes on 10th of April is Ram Navami, right? So all the Hindus, we all get together and celebrate. So the Ram Navami portions are there. Anybody, how many of them are listed or who are listed unlisted? You should have have this thing. You don't have an option. Anybody else? So how far do you think Jallianwala Bagh is from the Golden Temple?
100 meters.
Just hardly 200 meters. So why am I giving this is, today majorly we fight on communal lines. I am a Hindu, you are a Muslim, I am a Sikh, right? We basically fight on communal lines. Our politicians made us to fight that way. Our politicians, somebody gains politically. That's why we keep fighting. But that time, we had the Sikhs, the Hindus, and the Muslims. We all stood together on one common cause called freedom. Right? Later on, we fought, that's a different story within ourselves. But at that point of time, in 1910, 13, those period, we were all united as Indians. So there were two famous leaders. One was a Hindu leader and one was a Muslim leader. So they both were organizing these events, but they were totally against violence. So those days when the protests were gone, it's clearly told that you should not be getting any lathis and you should not be having anything which can attack and fellow human. So those two leaders were called by the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab. He said, come, let's sit with us. And then the British said, throw those guys in the jail. There used to be a jail in Dharamshala. So throw them in Dharamshala jail so that we cut off the leaders, and without leaders the protest can't happen. But what actually happened was, the advice given, if you go to put these guys in jail, the leaders in jail, who actually have not done any crime or they have not done any violence, it's going to instigate people to go into a violent path. Let's not do it. So these people were called in, they were treated as guests. So both these gentlemen went there, and then they had a chat or a discussion with the British governor there. And then after 45 minutes, he said, you are under arrest, and they are jailed. So people got agitated, we did nothing. Our protest was very peaceful. So why have we done this? And then came 11th and 12th, things got agitated. Because of this two arrests, people got agitated. So the lesson here is, when somebody protests peacefully, when somebody exercises his or her rights as a citizen and protest, and if you just keep throwing them in jail, just look at all the dictators in your generation, right, from Saddam Hussein to Gaddafi to whoever you take. We speak about King John, right? North Korean guy, fat guy, looks so funny but has a hypersonic missile equipped with a nuclear bomb. Look at Jinping, China. So we all say, see, look at China, they've been growing faster. Look at China, it's like the rule is being told, it's a rule. It looks good short term, but in long term, it destroys a nation. Right? Similarly, the thing happened here. People went violent, and what happens when you go in? So there were Indians and there were British people. They all collaborated together. They started bashing up British. So a couple of white-skinned people, the British people got killed. And then there was a lady who was running a missionary. Those days, missionaries used to be very active. So they come here to propagate the religion. So they were propagating Christianity, of course. So this lady was also bashed up. When she got bashed up, then the Britishers said, no, now we have to take some stricter actions. We have to cull this at the start. If it doesn't stop here in Punjab, now the country is going to be out of this. Why they did so? Because chunk of the forces, the British Army, the Imperial Army, the chunk of the forces were Indians. They did have forces from Burma, forces from elsewhere. But the Indian breed, the Indian soldiers who fought the war valiantly, displayed the courage to the British that without us we cannot win a war ever again. And World War II was imminent. The world was heading into another war. It's not just that the war got over, we're getting into another war. What British feared was something like 1857, where the Sipahi mutiny happened. The Sipahis revolted against the government. So they didn't want that to happen. So they said, okay, take a tough measure and then curtail this. So the governor calls up the army, Brigadier General Dyer. So he was told to curtail this so-called protest. So 13th April, which is today, 103 years before, all these people, children, women and everybody, they assembled in a place called Jallianwalabhag. Can you guess why did they assemble? It was just not for protest.
For the celebration of Baisakhi.
Okay. When I used to be in the college, I always used to prefer the last seat, the last gentleman. Just way I'm saying, it's good. You know what? I'll teach you a technique. If you all don't want to be noticed, be in the first row. Okay. On a fun side, okay? So, getting back to the subject. Why? Because it was Baisakhi. It was a spring festival. Right? Tomorrow's Tamil New Year, tomorrow's a lot of New Year's happen. Same goes for Punjabis as well. So they all assemble, children, women, there are dance shows, there are cultural shows. And then after the summer starts, you can't have a large congregation. Those days, there are hardly any TV, there are hardly any mobile, 4G, YouTube and so on. So people used to meet physically, so they used to meet and greet, and then they used to have an event and also show solidarity for those two leaders who were asked. So all of them got together, and then came a demon, a devil, a disgrace to the human race. His name was Brigadier General Dyer. I deliberately avoid in all my lectures not to pronounce his name fully. For the very same reason, we should not recognize such people. Right? So this guy comes in with his army. So now imagine we have a door towards the left, right, and there's a door rear side. There are three ways we can enter and exit this hall. Imagine there's only one way you can enter and exit. And rest three sides are covered fully with a wall. And those walls are almost 12 feet and above. Children were there, women were there, they all landed up. So this army, commanded by General Dyer, took a straight line formation. Which means you are all the protesters. Here is General Dyer, who tells us to take a linear straight line formation. Everybody had a weapon, mostly those days it was a 303 rifle, and semi-machine guns as well. They were lined up. All he said is, take aim. So people took aim. So those people who were the protesters or our own people, 20,000 people, were just asked, what is happening here? So even in those times, the toughest of the British rule, you have to warn a person, disperse. If they don't disperse, then you use a mild force. What is a mild force? Hit them with a lathi or so and so. If they still don't, then you fire in the head. If they still don't, fire at their knees. If nothing works, fire on few protesters who are in the front. Rest everybody will run it. That's how the protest usually happens. Now he says take aim, and then he gives a firing order. Nowhere you would see in the internet or so, there's one incident. The officer who was standing next to him, a major, he hesitated. Now those times British rule, violation of your superior officer's order is a very, very grave offense. You can be court-martialed, you can be killed as well. But in spite of that, he is a British officer. He hesitated for a few seconds. By then, the soldiers started firing, so he also started firing. Official count of British, when I do this crime, I always will under-report. Anywhere, when I do a crime, I will always under-report. Same thing British also said. Guns were fired. The firing went on for 15 minutes. You can just imagine I cannot run. The only way I can run is through this door. That's been shut. So I cannot run. So what people did was, they lifted up their children, at least the children could survive. They carried another man on the shoulders, went to the rear end of the Jallianwala complex, and then they started jumping. Few had jumped that way, they saved their life. But eventually, close to 2,600 rounds of bullets were fired. And they stopped firing, you know why? Can you guess why did they stop firing after 15 minutes? These criminals ran out of ammunition. It's not by choice or not by mercy or not by any sort of human compassion they stopped firing. They just ran out of ammunition. How many people died? Were killed. It's not died. Killed. 357 to 379 was the British count. 1,200 wounded was the British count. Indian National Congress, then the only nationalist party at that point of time, gave a count of 1,000 killed and another 2,500 injured. They just were butchered, they just were killed. Nowhere in human history such a thing happened. Later, Nazis and the German rule, they did something like this for Jews, but this was the maximum at those point of time. Something like of this sort in the recorded evidence of history happened. This happened. Now General Dyer went back. He called off his men, he went back. People were in a state of shock. They could retrieve those bodies, they were carrying it, and then the next day newspaper. Back then, during British time, somebody was sitting in the remote part of UP or in Bengal or say somewhere in, say for example, Ramnad and Kanyakumari. How much time it takes for this news to reach the citizen of that place? Yes?
More than
2 days. Anywhere between 1 day to 2 days. Some places it takes 4 days. So by 4 days, the entire nation, then India, came to know about this. There was anger, there was sorrow, worst form of human emotions, like frustration. Everything happened because people who died were our own brothers and sisters, children. Nobody was spared. So this became a major issue. And then this civil disobedience movement, along with Gandhiji's Satyagraha. Right? It picked up pace. Why I say this incident as a turning point, there are only two major turning points in India's modern history. One was the Sipahi Mutiny and second was the Jallianwala Bagh. Because people who have not even seen that, who read it in newspapers, today we have videos, today we have histories, we can recreate a scene as a cinema movie, we can do all this. Like what they did for Kashmir fights. But those days, you can just read it. But what people felt is, why can't this thing can happen to me tomorrow? If that can happen in Punjab, for my Sikh soldiers and Hindu soldiers and the Muslims there, why can't it happen to me? That created the stream and that created the buzz which actually screamed the freedom movement. So later on, this case was took up in UK, then Great Britain, England. So they said that there's a House of Commons and there's a House of Lords. There are two houses. So House of Commons, Winston Churchill condemned it. They never took apology. Remember, even till date they have not sought an apology. I am a friend, I just slapped my fellow bachelor, my roommate. We fight. What do you go and say to him? Sorry, right? You have killed thousands of people. They never took an apology till date. So they said it's a regrettable incident, we need to take actions on General Dyer. House of Lords, the other side of the British, right? They said General Dyer was the savior of Punjab. Can you imagine? This was on what we call it as a Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. One house said this guy has to be condemned, this act is wrong. The other house said that he's the savior of this thing and they praised him. So later there was a commission which was formed and then they did some inquiry. In that inquiry he was found to be guilty. When you kill 1,000 people, if you are the judge or you are a human being of a capacity where you can say this guy has done wrong, so if you have been given the right to punish, what would have been the punishment? Death, right? We hang people. In India, we have capital punishment till date. He was just told to resign. He just moved away. And by the time he was old enough to retire, he said, okay, you have done this, fine. It's a regrettable incident. But however, we will not revoke the Robert Act. People just say, okay, I found you a bad thing, like what corporate world does today, FIR. So this guy happily went back to England. He lived his retired life. Anybody knows what happened to him?
He died of a skin disease.
No.
He was shot by Sardar.
What's his name? You need to know his name.
Sardar Udham Singh.
Sardar Udham Singh. 1940. 1940, I'll just tell you where it is. On the Coston Hall in London, he was killed by Udham Singh. It was a revenge which was taken by his fellow citizen. He was killed. But now I leave this open to you. You can think whether it is right or wrong. Gandhiji condemned it. He said, revenge is not our dharma. Revenge is not what we want. Stop doing this. And he condemned. But he also condemned Jallianwala Bagh. Who was the first Indian leader before all this condemnation happened? Just guess who was that Indian leader who went against the British, gave a big award which he was given by the British government. And that leader was from Bengal. Guess who? It is Rabindranath Tagore. He was given knighthood. He said, I don't need your knighthood. To even today people give their awards back. But the crux of the matter is, what he said is, I don't want this award. I got this award because we thought that we are going to be inclusive government. We have the right participation. But you have failed us. I don't want to hold an award which is given by an imperialistic government with the blood spilled in my citizens' blood body. Right? That was the context. That's how it created. The second part of the freedom struggle, which is after World War II, predominantly was echoing more in the Bengal side. When I say Bengal, it's West Bengal and East Bengal, today's Bangladesh. So to sum up all this incident not only created a havoc in India, it also reignited the freedom struggle of all the 60 plus commonwealth countries. And at the end of this, so we have one more world war, right? World can never be a peace, we always want to fight. In this world war, again Indian soldiers went and joined the Indian army, but not at the scale of what it was in World War I. This time it was teaming business. And this time there was a parallel army, our own army, where more people volunteered and went and joined that without salaries, without nothing. What was it? Indian National Army. Who was the founder? Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So one side of the coin, we predominantly read in history. Yes, the peaceful way, Satyagraha, right? The non-cooperative movement, all this brought us independence. That's one side of the story. The other side of the story is the armed conflict which we took. That was Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. One side of the story we predominantly read. The other side, it's not our mistake, it's how the historians have written it. We should also equally understand INA, Indian National Army, it propagated, it paced up the entire thing. Otherwise, this independence would have taken another 3 more years, and by then British would have taken away everything from India. And today we speak about women empowerment, right? So we have the National Defense Academy, the pioneering institute of Indian Armed Forces. The women can join there. We have women becoming fighter pilots now. We have women becoming submariners now. These things which never used to happen in science schools, in military schools. You know who was the greatest leader who empowered women 100 years before? It was Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He had women soldiers in his army. So this entire narration of the British gave us education. British destroyed our education system. Till 16th century, the Western world believed that the earth was flat. And if you go beyond a point, you will fall out and then I don't know where you will go. That was the assumption. We have kings like Raja Chola who navigated. You know what was his navigation aid? Today we have radars, you guys are technical people who read about radars. What was the navigation aid of that king, the great king who went all the way to Cambodia? Stars and tortoise, sea turtle. You can read, I'm not a qualified expert, you can read how it was used to navigate, right? So our culture, our tradition, in terms of our education system, our cultural values, our dharma, everything was destroyed by them. They gave railway lines, no doubts. Why did British laid so much of railway lines, starting from Nagpur all the way to Delhi and so? Just guess.
Take everything out of it.
That's one. The main thing, because they are fighting such two great wars, they need logistics. They need to move material out. They need to move men in and men out. So they need the cheapest and the fastest mode of transport, which was railways. That's why they built so much of railways. They built a lot of cantonments. And if you mostly see right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, look at the cantonments where they built. Dharamshala, Yod, Baklo, right? Shimla, in down south, Ooty. Why didn't they build a cantonment in Rajasthan, in Chambal, in Uttar Pradesh? It was a holiday home for them. They were not ready to sweat. They were happy, cozy people who lived a luxury life. So whenever summers were there, we used to go and migrate to or sit there, chill out in a hill station. That's why they built so much of nice, beautiful hill stations, be it Darjeeling and be it anything. And the last and the final one. When we speak about this massacre, today it has become a tourist destination. Nothing wrong, it's a scar, and you can always, I got a cut in my left shoulder. During my military training, I had a very bad injury in my left shoulder. I still have a scar. That scar doesn't pain me today, but it reminds me of what I have done in my life. It gives you the path. One of you would have done a wheelie, you would have fallen back, fallen down from the bike, like KTM. But down 15, 20 years, if you see, this is a memory we will cherish. And there are certain bad memories as well, which we need to preserve and to pass on. One is Jallianwalabhag. Today we have Megdi rights outside the Jallianwalabhag. Doesn't mean anything wrong. We need to respect, we need to salute, we need to recognize, and we need to remember our ancestors and forefathers who have given their lives to us. Why? Can you guess why? Why do we need to remember all of them? They are gone, they are done, we are all gone in the modern world, we are living in a free world. Why should we even remember them? Or even celebrate it?
Fought for us.
They fought for us, Thanksgiving, fine. Beyond this, there is a selfish interest. You know what? If you forget your history, you are bound to do the same mistake again. If you forget your history, you are bound to undergo the same thing again. Histories have proven time and again about this. So this day of Jallianwala Bagh, we all have to remember, we all have to share. It's good that we can go take selfies and photographs, that's fine, nothing wrong in it. But we need to know at least what cost us this freedom. So today the most spoken word is about freedom of expression. I have the right to say, I have the right to answer back my teacher. I can shout at my parents. Fine, it's all fine. Who gave you this? Imagine the same college, say for example in Afghanistan. It was once India. Imagine the same university in Afghanistan. All the women, can the women sit here? No. And how the men should be? All of you, I think possibly all of you, including me, will be punished. Why? You need to have a beard. Right? So, this is important that we need to know our history, what colonization means. If we don't know, we are going to repeat the mistake again. The classical example of doing the mistake again and getting into the same thing again is Sri Lanka. They were under British rule. When we got independence, they got independence, they came home, they were like this. We should have been more patriotic. We forgot our history, we should reclaim. You come back, just see my Twitter line, you can see volume of source of messages. I keep getting messages from them. So never ever forget our history. This is the past, glorious past of our nation. Every one of us should understand. And this British story of British giving education, British giving railway line, it was all done for them. If we put a money value today, it was excessive of $3 trillion which British took from here. $3 trillion. If I put it in my economy today, in my country's economy today, be rest assured next 30 to 40 years, nobody has to pay an income tax or a GST. With that amount of money. So nobody gave anything for us free. Don't ever buy this logic. Okay? Don't be so proud of that British lineage. Even today, we are culturally still living with a colonial hangover. Right? Why? If you see a district collector, or if you see a superintendent of police, a big officer of a government, by respect, not by what you wear or what position you are in. We continue this because we still have a hangover of British legacy. We should preserve our tradition as Indians, but we should slowly come out of that hangover. Your generation is where the fulcrum changes. Till us, it was like that. If I see anybody contesting it today, I'll call him sir. That's my military habit. Even if I have not been in the military, I'll call my seniors as sir. It's nothing wrong in calling them sir, but we need to understand the superiors of whoever it is, the MLAs, the MPs, the ministers,